If you're just now getting into personality type, whether you've taken the online test or you've taken the professional test or you've studied cognitive functions online, you might be wondering, am I an INFP or am I an ENFP? This is one of the most common questions that I have gotten since I started this channel, and it's also one of the most common questions that I have seen before I even started making YouTube videos and was involved in the Myers-Briggs and even socionics and other typing communities. I've yet to make a video on this because it's such a complicated, convoluted thing. I can't just say one thing and then you're automatically gonna know if you're an INFP or an ENFP. But if you are one of those types, if you are an NFP, chances are you are looking for something that is a quick sort of answer, or at least some sort of quick answer that will put you on the right path. I know you guys get nuance in things. I'm not trying to say that. It's more like I understand how a lot of this can get confused if people aren't directly answering your question. And so I'd like to answer that question for you as best as I can right now, and also leave you with some places that you can actually look if you're wanting to answer that question for yourself. Because for starters, number one, nobody knows if you're an INFP or an ENFP besides you. If you are one of these types, then if you get some person talking in long paragraphs, analyzing how you look, how you're talking, your word choice, things like that, and they say, you seem like dominant introverted feeling to me, or you seem like an extrovert to me, all that's gonna do is confuse you more. And so I invite you to just listen to yourself. So there are two main ways to do this. One is the dichotomies, and two is the cognitive functions. Let's talk about the dichotomies for a second. If you took the Myers-Briggs test or any Myers-Briggs look-alike test like Human Metrics or Personality Hacker, Personality Junkie, I don't know, there's lots of those. It's gonna ask you questions where it's like, do I like to spend time with, or how much alone time do you spend versus how much time do I spend with friends? Now you have to remember, this is a very stereotypical extrovert or introvert question. So if you want to know if you're an INFP or ENFP, then, and you're looking at the extrovert or introvert thing, then you're probably going to be looking at things through how stereotypically extroverted or introverted I am. And so something you have to keep in mind is that ENFPs are not stereotypically extroverted in the sense where they don't necessarily like going out to bars and parties and loud places like that. Whenever an ENFP is extroverted, they are extroverted by virtue of extroverted intuition. They are extroverted because their mind is always moving, they're always taking in ideas, they are always consuming information. And so if you're wanting to look at the dichotomies, that's fine. Preferably, I suggest people look at the cognitive functions, but I also understand that if you're just starting out, then the cognitive functions might do more harm than good when it comes to confusing you and you're just trying to grasp the basics. The most basic way to know if you're an introvert or an extrovert is to look at, where are you getting your energy? But even that is a complicated question. So ENFPs don't necessarily get their energy from, other people. ENFPs get their energy from ideas because they use extroverted intuition, which I'll get into those later. I'm trying to stay focused. So whenever you are looking at the dichotomies, ask yourself, how often am I engaging with ideas? Now, both of these types are going to be doing it a lot, but how often do you really? So as opposed to asking yourself, how often do I need to relax and recoup versus how much am I going out and spending out time with friends, ask yourself that in relation to ideas. How much am I going out and consuming other ideas, and how often do I need a break from those ideas and need to be aligned with my belief? So that's the question you're asking. If you're an INFP, you are more aligned, well, not aligned, you're more attuned to your belief than gathering all these other options and these other possibilities. So an INFP loves gathering information, but it will become tiring. INFPs rejuvenate by believing what they believe, and ENFPs rejuvenate by always coming up with more ideas. And it's become stressful for an ENFP when they spend too much alone time or introvert time, which would be time where an ENFP is completely plugged into their belief system without checking to see what other people's belief systems are. So if you're going to do the dichotomy route, at least realize that what introvert and extrovert means is not going to be what you necessarily think it means. And in the case of an INFP or ENFP, it's going to be way more in relation to how you interact with ideas. And so when you're thinking about where your energy's going, are you tired by too many ideas? Or are you tired by or not getting enough ideas? Do you feel super like thirsty for ideas at all times? That is one of the biggest indicators. So now let's move on to cognitive functions, because it is, I think, a way more accurate way of looking at your type. So INFPs are FI, NE, SI, and then TE, where ENFPs are NE, FI, no, sorry guys, don't even listen to that. ENFPs are NE, FI, TE, and SI. So as you can see, the cognitive functions are the same, but slightly different. And so to really understand if you're an INFP or an ENFP would be to understand what is NE and what is FI, and which one of those things am I at the mercy at, and which one of those functions do I use to relieve myself from the function that I am at the mercy at. Now, everyone is at the mercy of something, and everyone uses other functions and other things to relieve themselves from whatever they feel like they're at the mercy at. And so most balanced people are going to be using their dominant function and their auxiliary function pretty regularly together, because it's not really healthy to be 100% introverted or 100% extroverted. So healthy INFPs and ENFPs are going to look very similar. They're going to be people that know who they are, know what they believe, and are always, looking out in the distance for more possibilities, and always talking to people and asking them, how did you come to your worldview, and why do you believe what you believe, and how did your experiences influence who you are? So all of these things are NFPs things. So first of all, I also want to tell you that if you are really stressed out about how you don't know which one of those things you are, ask yourself, why do you care? Because at the end of the day, you're a creative person, you're an empathetic person, and these labels, I think that a lot of people attach these labels to, oh no, well, I don't want to be a person that has a bunch of social anxiety, or I don't want to be a person that's too much and too out there. Like, I don't want to be an extrovert because the times that I have been extroverted, people have dimmed my light, and I would rather just be more quiet and someone that isn't taking up space. Or some of you guys might think, well, I wish that I felt like I belonged more. So things like that, like, just sort of check in with yourself and ask yourself what sort of connotations you have about what it means to be extrovert or introvert, and try and just get rid of that bias right now and just have a clean slate, and realize that INFPs can be very, outspoken individuals that have large groups of people that they belong to in a community where they belong. INFPs are not just like the socially awkward nerd at all times, like just because you're an introvert doesn't mean that you aren't gonna have a social life. And, I know several INFPs that are very well known in their respective communities, and they, get invited to things and they go out and, they're not losers, INFPs aren't like more loser, like they aren't like the lamer, more lonelier version of ENFPs. So do not even think of it like that. And ENFPs are not the more extra bubbly, annoying versions of INFPs. That's also not true. And so ask yourself if you have resistance to seeming super annoying, if you have been told that you ask too many questions or anything like that. Like ENFPs can very much keep to themselves, and they don't really need you to include them in a group. even though they're extroverts. So also get rid of that. So to really understand if you're an INFP or an ENFP, you need to know if you use FI or NE. And so if you are an INFP, even though you're a P, you are going to be a little bit more judger-like than most Ps, because your very first function is a judging function, which is introverted feeling. For INFPs, their main state of being is their belief system. So when they are expressing what they think, it is very deliberate because it is coming from what their belief system is at all times. INFPs, their belief system is the filter that colors everything that they see. And you might think, oh, well, that makes INFPs like biased, selfish assholes. Well, no, that's not really true, because everyone has bias and everyone has a worldview that covers what they see, but it's the INFP that's more aware of the fact that their worldview is doing that, and the fact that they do have a specific place in this world and a specific story that they're seeing things through. INFPs are aware of that at all times, and their belief system comes first. That whenever they seek out other things with their extroverted intuition, it is normally to support their worldview. Whereas ENFPs, their introverted feeling that they experience is normally will come after the fact. It's like they will be talking to people, all these things, and exploring things in the extroverted intuition, and then they will become sort of like, for lack of a better word, they'll become sort of triggered by a situation. They'll feel an emotional reaction to something that was going on, but they won't really expect that that was about to happen as much as an INFP would. ENFPs would be more taken off guard by their emotions at certain at certain scenarios, even though both INFPs and ENFPs are normally in tune with their emotions. ENFPs can sort of ignore their emotions more readily and skip over them, and in fact overanalyze their emotions by skipping from NE to TE and then back and forth, and they might feel very deeply, but they might not identify as much with that feeling. And so on some regards that's good for an ENFP, because if they don't identify with the feeling as much, then they might not let it hold them back as much. But at the same time, INFPs, when they identify with the feeling, they're also able to heal it faster and process it faster. So the way that these functions, the position that they're in, changes things drastically. But you aren't going to find like a straight up definition of something that says, you know, INFPs are this way and ENFPs are this way, because both INFPs and ENFPs are capable of being highly creative, highly sociable, highly loving people. And it doesn't matter if they're an extrovert or an introvert. But what I have found is that the INFPs, they really know who they are, and they sort of, their story of life, their story arc of life is that they have had to grow the courage to share themselves, and that the more they share themselves, the more belong they feel, and the more comfortable they feel sharing their opinions and their ideas. And so if you're an INFP, you might look back at your life, look back at you as a kindergartner or whatever, and think about that story. Were you constantly overcoming a fear of sharing who you were? Did you feel the sort of feeling in your heart where you're like, I know who I am, I just don't know if I'm going to be accepted by the outer people, outer world, and I don't know if I should share it because it would be too painful to share my full self, because it feels like only I know my full self. And if your life story and your trials and tribulations have sort of involved this idea of you know, empowering yourself over that fear and constantly choosing yourself, and that's where you've seen your belonging start to change, good chance you're an INFP. If you're an ENFP, you might feel, as opposed to that, you might feel like you've always been a little weird, like you've asked a bunch of questions, you've hopped from friend group to friend group, you've always been seeking who you are, and you've always been asking questions that seek answers, and you've had to constantly stop trying to identify with hopping from group to group to group and instead stayed put. That's like the hardest thing for an ENFP, is to stay put and stop seeking possibilities and be like, you know what, this is who I am. An ENFP might not know who they are because they won't want to decide on one possibility. Their thing is that anything is possible, even the bad things, even the good things. Whereas an ENFP, though, I will say that sometimes their everything is possible thing could be a little biased, where they really think that their fears are more possible than their desires, or they might be biased and think that their desires are more possible than their fears. All of this possibility stuff is going to be like colored by their introverted feeling, but ENFPs, the NE comes first, and so it's going to be less colored by the feelings, and it's going to be more of anything is possible. And so if an ENFP is trying to decide who am I, then they aren't going to decide as quickly, because they're going to be caught up here in NE land trying to troubleshoot every possibility. But their FI still deeply wants to know who they are, and they're still very deeply a seeker and wondering who they are. But it's going to be way different than INFPs, who feel like they're carrying who they are in their chest so much, and they're just afraid to go out there and see what other people's experiences are and see how they fit in with that. So I feel like I've been maybe repeating myself a little bit. If you're still not sure after this video, you can ask a specific question to me. And also, if you'd like a one-on-one session with me where we talk about this, that is something that I am starting soon. So I'm gonna link below not only my Facebook group, where you can go post your questions, and personality typology for self-growth, which is my Facebook group, but also my Facebook page. Now, I don't know when you're watching this video, if it is months in the future, where I'm at with this one-on-one session thing, so I'm not going to say the details now. And so if you're interested in something like that, I would recommend finding my Facebook page and seeing if the information's on there when you're watching this, and also reaching out to me with a question if that's something that you'd be interested in. But essentially, if you're not convinced after this of which one you are, then I would really try and look into the aspects of yourself. Ask yourself generally, like, okay, you know that you're a feeler and you know that you're an intuitive. How do these two aspects of me interact with one another? Ask yourself, of all the times that I've been emotional in life, why? And of all the times that I have, been intuitive in life, why? Because INFPs, their intuition completely serves their feelings. Their ideas are all generated based on their worldview. And ENFPs aren't like that. They have no limits to their possibilities. But in fact, their feelings on a particular day is going to change based on what possibility they're entertaining that day. Where INFPs, their FI is way more constant. And even though both of these types are going to perform the same behavior, and a healthy and balanced person of each type is going to be genuinely capable of doing the same exact thing as each other, the way that these things interact are so inherently different. And you can check out my other videos about blind spots if you're curious about how that works as well, because INFPs have an extroverted sensing blind spot, whereas ENFPs have an introverted thinking blind spot. And so that means that, each of these types, even though they're similar, INFPs and ENFPs have completely different weak links to them, where ENFPs, it more involves that they don't necessarily know what they think on a certain issue, and they don't know how to communicate their opinions, whereas INFPs, they don't really trust that reality is real. So, you know, all NFPs are gonna resonate with that at different levels, and so don't even like you can ask other people their experiences, but really ask yourself, how do those things weigh against yourself? Don't look at like, well, this person's an INFP and they're more social than me, or this person's an ENFP, they're more social than me, I must be an introvert. That's not the way to decide these things. You have to decide by asking yourself if your emotions are more in control of you than your pursuit of possibilities, or, you know, things like that. And so that's my suggestion to you. I really hope that you enjoyed this video. Please join my Facebook group below, like I mentioned. And for those of you who have been following me and are waiting for my series about things that I've learned about different personality types, I am still doing it. I might even post another one today. I just felt like doing this video, and so I like to follow what I feel inspired by at the moment. And so I felt like doing this video, and I'm gonna do more videos like this of other type comparisons for beginners, because I don't really make a lot of content for beginners, and it's because I've been, you know, afraid to, because I thought I'd say something wrong. So, you know, hopefully this video didn't suck and I didn't confuse anyone too bad, or like, I'm always worried about like either accidentally confusing people too much or accidentally dumbing it down and not answering the real question. And it seems like there's kind of no win-win. Like, if there's, on one hand, I could be way too confusing, and on the other hand, I could just repeat myself over and over and not give anyone anything new. And it really depends on what state the viewer is at, or what personality type the viewer is at, and I can't really, you know, guess who's gonna be watching. And so I try really hard to, you know, please everyone, ENFJ probs. But anyway, thank you for watching this video, and have a wonderful day.